this guy just starts reaching his finger around and tried to put his finger in my butthole. And I'm like,
Jesus.
and I kind of felt it, and I was like, what? And I was just like, and then I just looked at him, I'm like, are you trying to stick your finger in my butt, like on stage in front of like, like 350 people? And he was just like,
The show must go on. Even if the show goes wrong, the show must go wrong.
So to start, can you give me your elevator pitch of who you are? Because in case anybody doesn't know, one of the most prolific touring stand-up comedians in Europe, but I'm very honored to have you here. But can you give us your elevator pitch of who you are?
prolific. I like that. It's nice. I am a storyteller / stand-up comedian / cabaret artist / singer who has been traveling the world for the better half of probably 10 years, but probably longer than that. I have been performing solo shows since I was 19, so 18 years I've been doing this in different forms of obviously stand-up has been the last 10 years, but yeah, I'm just a traveling nomad entrepreneur female comedian.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm very excited to have you here. And I think what's interesting for me when I get to talk to someone like you who has such a breadth of a career and who has an audience as well, like a kind of a specific audience.
Yeah.
I think the question I start with is what was your last bad show, which I think is kind of interesting because I'm wondering, when you have developed that audience, is it still possible to have bad shows with them?
Honestly, I think in terms of bad shows now, I'm very lucky now because when you have an audience, they're so there with you. And even last night, before I even started the show and I was doing a lot of new stuff, people are already like, whoa, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, guys, gonna do new stuff, might not be funny. But I think, but I still challenge myself. Now I've moved from Berlin to London and I'm doing a lot of the club rooms in London, which I get when I first sort of started doing, I do a lot of Top Secret, and I just started getting so anxious the first time I was doing gigs there because I'm I know my audience like me, and I write storytelling stuff that's a little bit more not so in your face club comic this, but I love that challenge again. It's I haven't done it for so long. Because I do think you sort of get lulled into this false sense of security when you have a following and they come and see you, that they just think that everything is funny that you do. And then you sort of get out and you do the club sets and you're like, oh, okay, that's hacky, or that doesn't work, or they don't know me as they don't know who I am, or they don't have that relationship with me. So that, parasocial relationship. So they're just fucking make us laugh. And that's kind of it. I don't actually remember the last bad show I had, and I know that sounds really wanky, but I think it's more for me now, it's internalized. The audience will still love it and they'll be having a good time, but maybe what's going on in my personal life or this kind of stuff is affecting me. But then I walk off stage and be I'm having a bad show, but they don't think that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Which I actually think that's an important lesson in comedy generally, is that I felt one of the things I've just learned in the last year, or maybe 6 months, is it's that sometimes I'm having a bad time and they're not having a bad time. And then if I say you guys are having a bad time, they're like, what?
Yeah.
And then I make them have a bad time.
I know, they're bottoms up, they're drinking, they're I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Are you okay? I think it's that thing. And also as you get older as well, I'm in 37 in a couple of months, and it's you get to that age, in the last couple of years, I've had a lot of very I had a death in the family again this year. I had one a couple of years ago, and on those days, when my grandma passed away a couple of years ago, I had to do 3 shows, and it's just but you sort of push through, and you're having a bad time internally. Yeah. But I come also from a theater background where it's the show must go on. Like you, whatever's happening, you just swallow that fucking pill and you just get, not an actual pill, but like, you know, you just like,
well, sometimes a little Tylenol, you know,
a little like that, a little Valium, like, you know, maybe some Molly, like whatever. Like, but you know, you just have to suck it up and go out on stage. And I think that's been something where I've been questioning a lot lately, because I'm like, how much do we have to kind of, you know, suffer? Because I you know, my boyfriend works in a normal job, and like if they have grief leave or whatever, it's just like, oh no, take time off, like do that, and we're just like push through, like it is what I am sometimes uncomfortable with about like my connection with comedy and my mental health is like, so there are moments where it's like push through and you're just kind of like going through the motions, but what I don't love, which I mean, you could also look at it as a positive, but is like sometimes I'm having a really hard time and then I have a good show and I feel way better. And you're like, it's not great that my good or bad day hinges on how my set went that night. And I think actually as well, like, I mean, yeah, like even this year, like it was quite like very sudden with my aunt and everything like that she passed away. And like, and I remember I was like so like grief stricken and like distraught. And then like the only time I felt normal and like good was on stage in the moment. And you just like, what, like there must be something. And I know they say it's like, you know, if you do like comedy or on stage or whatever, it's like the same hit as like heroin. And I was like, I kind of believe it, like, because it does make you forget about everything else that's going on in your life, because you're just there, you're in the moment, your brain's like working overtime to like, you know, figure out the audience, like tell the jokes and stuff. And I like, it's honestly the place where I feel the most normal in the world.
It's crazy to me also that it's like there's stuff that I'll say to an audience that I wouldn't say to like some of my best friends, like where but it's also funny because it makes so much sense to me. It's like when I feel like I'm on stage, what it forces sometimes is like to be in the moment, which, you know, I was raised Buddhist, so it's like that's very like such a Buddhist idea. You're so in the moment. True. And it is funny to then be like, and so people on heroin probably are super in that moment. People talk a lot about the bad sides of heroin, but man, those are present people.
Yeah, they're very like living in the moment. They're like the OG white girls, you know, like that's what the white girls are trying to do, is like just go and do some heroin.
So what about, so you're moving to London and you know, you tour in Europe, you have your audience here, and then obviously you do some shows in Berlin and whatnot. And I imagine from my perspective of performing in Berlin is a very different kind of audience makeup than what I think of as performing in London. And that also is a little intimidating to me. Maybe that's also because at my point, the entry point is like the gong shows and this kind of mayhem. But how, like, have the audiences in London surprised you? Has it been different? Is it something that you've had to adjust to?
I think a little bit yes and no. Like the good thing about Berlin, I mean, it's one of those things where like I've gigged in like so many different countries now, like, and going to different places, and a lot of my audiences are expat, and a lot of people who do go and see comedy shows outside of like English speaking countries are a lot of expats, because they're like, oh, we want to connect or, you know, laugh about stuff or like whatever, whether it's like, I mean, I just did some shows in Singapore on the way, and like, you know, more than half my audience was like expats, and that I find particularly in Asia, I get a lot of like probably more so Europeans or Australians or like whatever. But I think with the thing with London now is like going back into that. Like I used to do the Fringe. I did the Fringe for 6 years, I think from like 2012 to like 2017 or 18. And that for me is kind of what I understood comedy to be, where it's so raucous, it's so like crazy. Like some of these shows that they used to do in Edinburgh, I think they still do them, like the late night, I think at the Gilded Balloon, which we used to run from like 1 a.m. till like 3 a.m. And it was like a dog cage, like you just like thrown in there, and it was just like, you know, heckling and stuff. So I think that going back into that again, I'm like, oh, people will talk back, people will heckle, like. And I was actually having a conversation with a friend the other day about it, and I was like, I don't think anyone heckles as much or as, I don't want to say violently, but like as like UK audiences.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had that experience there or.
Yeah, I haven't done much over in the UK. I went to the Fringe and definitely it was different. But I also have this feeling where anytime I'm performing to native speakers, it's just it's a little bit of a different experience for me where I feel like, oh, you guys are getting the bits that are a little bit more for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's also like the first time I did shows in the US, like it was so scary. I'm just like, I was so used to like German audiences and stuff like that don't really talk back. Like, and I think the thing with like American audiences is like they will, especially like in East Coast, like DC or places like that, Boston or whatever, like, and people there are just so funny anyway that like, it's like the Irish, you know, you sort of have to be as funny. And I think East Coast like always felt like that for me. And that's why like, I mean, I do like going to Ireland and doing gigs there. Cause again, they're like, oh, if you know, I know the guy down the street is funnier. So you got to,
you got to bring it.
Yeah. Whereas I find like the heckles and stuff in the UK, like I know there's that story of like Jim Jeffries where like a guy got on stage and like glassed him over the head. And I was listening to a podcast with James Acaster the other day and he was like, oh yeah, a guy came up and like pushed me in the back and like pushed me off stage. Like, and I was like, oh yeah, I think that only happens in like really drunk rooms in the UK. Like it's really like quite violent. I don't know, like it's a different kind of thing, but I am enjoying it. It's and I mean I mainly do shows at Top Secret, which is one of my favorite clubs in London, and it's they do like £1 tickets, so they want to make comedy accessible for everyone. So it's not just like, and with that like £1 tickets, like you get everyone, like you get students, you get all people, like you get everyone in on these shows, and I think that's what makes it's such a vibe, like, and you know, you just really, and I've kind of gotten over the anxiety again of like club rooms, and I'm like, okay.
So I wanted to also talk a little bit about like, so you have come from like a theater cabaret background more originally, and 'cause I'm interested in like, what is a bad show for an actor or a cabaret person? So like, what is a bad show for that, and how does that feel different or the same as like if you're having a bad show as a comedian? Yeah,
I mean, it's more like now having done comedy for a long time and always wanting that, like the silences in cabaret is good, you know, like if you're like telling like a really like, you know, important story and about some like, I don't know, whatever problem you have. Like for me, I was like, 20, 21. And I was like, I don't know, like what problems do you have? But anyway, like, and you tell these kind of like very kind of, you know, heartfelt, like anecdotal stories and with a lot of pathos and like this. And like, that's what you want, the silence. And then now I find after doing comedy for like, probably for 10 years, I'm like, oh, I don't like the silences, you know, like this. But I think it sort of depends. Like, I mean, I came from studying musical theatre at a very very good acting school in Australia, and it was very hard to get into that school, and I really wanted, like, my love was musical theatre. Like I loved it. That's all I wanted to do growing up, and I had been in the theatre and doing shows since I was like 11 or 12, like through school and through outside of school as well. Like my hometown in Australia was very fostering of musical theatre. Like a lot of them now are still like, you know, doing very big kind of things. And so I went to this like school, and I kind of got a bit disillusioned because this, you know, these institutions, which funnily enough, that's what it's called, but it's like, you're like, yeah, it does feel like a mental institution because they sort of like, their whole thing of it is like to break you down and then build you back up again. So they break down everything. Like you sort of go in there every day being told you're shit, you'll never make it, like you're too fat, like you need this. So I mean, it does make you stronger, but also maybe funnier. I don't know. Yeah,
and so their idea is like, basically it's such a hard path that like if them bullying you is going to make you quit, then that means it's not for you.
Yeah, it's like that mentality, which I mean this is a school that, like, you know, Jeffrey Rush went to, Kate Blanchett, like it's like it very fosters a lot of these like very famous actors and actresses out of Australia, and I mean our course was like a little bit different. I don't know, it was just like I had a lot of kind of like trauma that took a long time to get over that from that. But well,
also like, historically, to be 18 to 22 is a time where like you're all, I don't want to speak for you, but at least for me, it's like my self-esteem was so low. I was such a wreck. And then if I had also outside people being like, no, actually your inner monologue is correct.
Yeah.
You do suck. I think that would have been
Yeah.
like the final nail in the coffin.
100%. And you're just like, oh, no wonder like people, and actually we only had 12 people in our course. And I'm pretty sure like I'm the only one who's still actively like performing on stage. Like a few people are doing like wedding singing or maybe directing or producing and this kind of stuff. But for the most part, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who's like performing out of 12. Like that's how many people like dropped off. And, but it just killed it. It killed musical theatre for me. But I remember we also in these like schools, you get the best teachers like that are working in the industry. And we had this amazing cabaret teacher he was originally from New York and had grown up in like sort of 60s, 70s doing cabaret in New York. And he was just like, the phone's never going to ring. You always have to make your own work and you have to do that. And as soon as I finished, that course, there was a cabaret competition in Sydney and I put my name in and I did it. And I won my heat and then I went into the grand final and I didn't win, but I got like really like great comments. And I was like, oh my God, like I think I can write my own cabarets and get paid for it. And I can sing the songs that I want like this. And so then from there, like basically from 19, I was like, this is amazing. I wrote a show with another friend of mine. And like, since then I was just doing cabarets. And then I got into hosting burlesque, which again, coming back to your question of like bad shows, burlesque is like, I was hosting and you rarely have a bad show because people are like titties, like, you know, it's like.
But is it ever a problem? Like, cause I also imagine as the host, you're kind of the mediator and, burlesque is kind of relying on a level of like audience buying into the correct way to be enjoying this and not necessarily, I could imagine if you get the wrong person and it's like titties. Then you have to go out and be like, well, okay, hold on.
Calm down. I think the beautiful thing about burlesque is it's like such a niche art form that I think a lot of people who would come to it were kind of just like a little bit more, I don't know, like reserved, like not reserved, but they were just like, oh, okay, this is what, and they just had no idea. Like, and I think this
they were
was
along for the ride.
Yeah, like they're kind of down for it. I mean, there was occasional times where you would have like, bucks parties or like stag do's in, and you would just be like, oh, okay. But I mean, then you sort of you learn how to deal with them, and for the most part, like they're gonna go off to the strippers later anyway. So they're like, okay, we'll leave it for that. Whereas like now we want art, and
this is the classy part of the night.
Yeah. So I think like that was a really good experience, and like I did a lot of shows, and that's like when I first moved over to Berlin, I was like hosting a lot of burlesque, and we'd go down to Prague and like other places and just like host these shows and sing because like I was mainly more a singer than anything else, and then I don't know, like I just had I had some great shows, I had some weird shows, and I think, but I was saying this actually to Jana yesterday, like one of the weirdest shows I had when I was at the Edinburgh Fringe. Again, Edinburgh Fringe, like I have a lot of random stories from that. But I remember I got this guy up on stage and like I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, that's a bit dodgy. But I was doing this song where I would like sing and I sort of like sit them on the chair and I kind of sit on them and like, and I had like kind of like a sexy kind of outfit on. And this guy just starts reaching his finger around and tried to put his finger in my butthole. And I'm like, and I kind of felt it and I was like, what? And I was just like, and then I just looked at him, I'm like, are you trying to stick your finger in my butt like on stage in front of like, like 350 people? And he was just like, and he just looks at me, he's like, yeah. And I'm like, get the fuck off the stage. Like,
oh, wow.
And
that's, wild thing to do. And the ownership is almost wilder to me than the trying to sneak it.
But also like, what a heckle,
How did the audience take that?
I think a lot of them were just like, I mean, you also as a host, you sort of have to call out like what's happening in the moment and like kind of stuff. And I was like, that is not okay. And like, anyway, he went back and this was also, I think this was probably like kind of more like Me Too movement. So if I had have like known that now, I probably would have been like, oh, security guard, like, get this guy and like whatever. But I think also again, like that thing, like the show must go on.
And coming next,
this guy's got a finger in your near butt. It's just like
now time for a ballad.
Right. They're just like my heart will. So I think like I just had so many weird experiences like that, like in Edinburgh, like, and I remember one time I was doing this show and this guy, like, he was so drunk, like, because again, like in Edinburgh, like these places, like you just get people who are so wasted, and they're like, oh my god, that show, and he just like kept calling out slut the whole time. He was like, slut, you're a slut. Like that was it. The heckle. So I was like, fuck you. And I had a green smoothie with me, and he had this brand new white t-shirt on, and I just went up to him. I'm like, what did you say? And I kind of go into like a mother role in this way. I'm like, sorry, what did you say? Oh, okay, you said call me a slut, did you? And I just poured the green smoothie all down him, and it went all everything. And of course he was so drunk, he's like, and I just grabbed his hand. I'm like, come on, we're going to go outside. We're going to go. And I just brought him outside, and I grabbed his hand, and I like gave it to the security guard. And the security guard grabbed his hand, and I was like, bye. And I was like, so I think there's like, that disappointed mother, like, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. And that's sort of like what I do when I get on stage, and I'm just like,
That's actually such a smart approach to, because there is this like weird dynamic. Maybe it's different, but with like cabaret or something. But like, I feel like there's this weird dynamic in hosting. It happened to me last night,
right?
Where it's like someone is talking to the audience in the audience, which you've told them not to, and then you're like, "Hey, you gotta stop talking." And then the audience takes their side sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you're like, wait, I lost the room?
Yeah.
Trying to control the room? Make the show better for you guys? So I've just, the disappointed mother is such a great strategy of like, you're kind of there with you. You're kind of still performing, but you're also being like, and shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and shut the fuck up. And it's like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't even know where that comes from. Like, and like I recently got my phone nearly stolen in Paris. And like, I think it's just either that or I'm just supposed to be a mother. I don't know. And this guy, like, he grabbed my phone. Like, I turned around and I could just see him, and he just grabbed it out of my pocket. And I looked at him, and instead of going, oh, fuck off, like, getting all angry, I was like, excuse me. All right. And he just, and he looks at me and he's like, and then he just put the phone down and ran away. And I was like, thank you, I'll take my phone back.
I love that the best anti-crime strategy is just hit him with some sass.
Hit him with sass. Like, do you really think that was a good idea?
Yeah. Is your mother proud of you right now? So you do this cabaret competition, and you realize, okay, actually, I can write stuff for myself. Maybe I can kind of be the maker of my own destiny in some way. And so then do you start trying to self-produce and run shows in Australia, and you're touring around with this, and how quickly then are you going to the Fringe Festival?
Yeah, so I think like I started self-producing at 19. Like I was doing shows just sort of between...
Which is insane, by the way. Like I could barely do my laundry at 19. You know what I mean? Like the organization is just...
I know. But do you know what? I feel like it's like I look at my parents now and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like my family had like a family business growing up. So I grew up in that. And then we also grew up on a farm. So like on a farm, you never sit still. And you are also doing all of the work on the farm, invoicing, like all this sort of stuff, as well as like we had the family business where I was watching all of that. And I remember even like, I think when I was like 6 or 7, I had a bracelet business where I was selling bracelets to like everyone. I was like, okay, I think I was born to be like an entrepreneur. And I think at 19, I was just like, oh yeah, like I just loved organizing. I loved organizing travel. I loved like, even throughout my high school, particularly my last year, I decided instead of going on like in Australia, they call it schoolies, where you finish your school and you go like to Queensland for 2 weeks and you just drink and get fucked up. And me and my best friend were like, we don't want to do that. So we literally like flew to New York as an 18-year-old, like just wanting to see musical theater. And I think I spent my whole year of my final year just like organizing that travel and like whatever. And so I think like it was just always in me. And then I never really thought about, like, I always wanted to live overseas. I didn't know how to do that. And then when I was 21, I got a Disney contract in Indonesia, and it was my first like international tour. And I kind of saw how it worked from like a really kind of like, I guess, a business perspective of like touring.
So what does that mean? Like a Disney contract, meaning like, like to work as a character in a park or be a part of a touring show?
Yeah,
or?
So it was a touring. So I was Snow White.
Okay.
When I had brown hair and brown short hair at that time. I don't know, like, probably like typecast. And I had an agent at the time in Melbourne, and she got me this like gig, and it was just to Indonesia. It was just like for I think like 3 weeks, and we did like rehearsals in Jakarta, and then we did shows in Medan, which is far north, and then we did Surabaya, which is like in Java, like in the south part, and we did them in the malls. Like big mall shows are very big in Asia, like so they have a lot of character shows.
Now, were those bad shows? 'Cause, I mean,
no, they were actually amazing. Like I had the best time on that. Like, I mean, I did, but then I also
like when you tell me like I'm doing musical theater in a mall in Jakarta, I'm like, that sounds like it could be amazing, or it could be a certain like ring of hell. Like,
no, it's like so malls in Asia are like a massive things, like especially Singapore, like Jakarta, like Indonesia, because they're all air conditioned and they have these like massive areas where they do a lot of performance. Like so the first one we did in Medan was like more of like we would go out, we would meet the kids and take photos, and like you just be there like smiling, you're like the whole day. And then we did a little bit of like singing, like so I sang, and then like on the second one that we did in Surabaya, this mall was owned by this like Aussie guy and his like Indonesian wife, and it was like we walked into the ballroom and it was like this massive stage, like lights. They had like this is so they had VIP, they had like raked seating, so they had like VIP couches for the rich children, and then it was like middle class, like lower class, low class, and if any kid tried to run forward, the security guards would just like knock them down, and you're on stage being like someday, like, oh my god, like
it's intense to have like that level of like classism, but with children,
right? And like I'd never seen that before, and I was like, oh my god, and they were amazing. Like, and I remember in this trip, like the first trip was like fine, like we were in like a normal hotel and like whatever, and then in Surabaya, because this guy was like loaded, he put us up in the Shangri-La, like, which is like, I don't know if people know, but it's like 5-6 star hotel, like it was insane, and we're just like, what like is
and
this?
you're 23,
21
21 yeah.
And I was like, I want to travel and perform. This is what I want to do.
You're like, and this will be what it's like for the rest of my life.
yeah and like I think I just like then I aimed for it and stuff. So I think from that, like I just got this, like I went to Singapore for the first time. I think this was like 2010, and like I just was like, this is what I want to do. And I think even like I wrote like a note when I was like, I think like my vision board when I was probably 15, and it was like, all I want to do is travel and perform, like that's it. And it's funny that like you look back and you're like, oh, that's what I'm doing, you know, like that's what it is. So I kind of from there, and then I was like, I have to get overseas, and I'm half Italian. I was eligible at that time to get citizenship through my mum, and I was like, just get the passport, move overseas, like, and I had no plan. I had friends in Berlin. I didn't want to go to London at that time. I was like, so I just came here, and I saw my other friends who had moved here, and they were burlesque performers. They were getting work, and I was like, great.
So it seemed there was like also more career opportunity in the world of like burlesque and cabaret over here, or just it was more like an exciting, just seemed more exciting to do?
Yeah, I think because I had done Edinburgh and I'd met a lot of people like in that, and at that point I was also doing cabaret, but I was also doing musical comedy as well. So I had been to the Edinburgh Fringe doing my show at Assembly with another comic, and we did like a musical comedy show which went really well. And I think I'd always wanted to do stand-up, because it's like that thing where you go, I want to challenge myself. I want to, like, I can sing, I can do this cabaret stuff and wear the costumes and whatever, but I want to strip it bare, and I just want to be me on stage with a mic. You know, like you're always looking for that next challenge or like whatever. And I never felt comfortable to do that in Australia. So when I first moved here, the first day I moved here, September in 2016, and I went... that night, my friend Aman was performing at Cosmic, and he's like, do you want a set? And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. And so I went down there and I did my first like kind of, you know, stand-up set, which I sang a song at the end and got like a standing ovation, and Neil and Dar come up and gave me like the Cosmic mug, and they're like, this is for you. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, I feel like this is a good thing. And then since then I had been working, and then I met another like American comic here in Berlin, and then we just were like, let's do this full time. Let's just go on the road full time. And so 2017 we started doing it, and then 2018 I just packed up all my shit, and we I think 2018 was 350 shows in 65 countries in 1 year,
which is insane.
But
very impressive. I want to get back to the theme of the show, bad shows. I mean, just by the numbers, that must have had some ups and downs. Were there any memorable ones from that stretch, or if there's just, I mean, I kind of prepped you a little bit for it, but like any other ones that pop to mind of like particularly bad. And I also want to say, I maybe should have clarified this, is like, for me, as what's interesting as I perform more is it's like, there's like bad shows where it's like, oh, the audience was weird, you know? But actually, I think that the majority of my bad show stories are like, the venue was like, turned the soccer game on behind me while I was performing, shit like that.
I think it's like that thing where a lot of people, and like obviously having done like, I mean, that 2018 to 2020, like I think it was nearly 800 shows that I'd done in over like 65 countries, and like just constantly touring and on the road for nearly 3 years. And like 2018 was interesting because that was where I was like transitioning from cabaret into stand-up. And I had one set, like at that point, the first 6 months of the show, like I had one set. It was very German orientated because that's obviously where I had honed my comedy and my jokes and stuff, and it was all about Germans, right? So, and you're doing shows in all these places. You're doing shows in America. You're doing shows in like, some countries are a bit more like open and they kind of understand. And the good thing about Germans is you can make a joke about them everywhere and most people can get it. Thank you, stereotypes. And
also, look, everybody doesn't like World War II, but thank you, World War II.
Yeah.
Really put him on the map.
Hey, thank you, Hitler. I don't think those words have ever been said, right? It's just crazy. So, and like, I remember like there was, but coming back to like the venue stuff, like what I know now, and if I'm producing a show or if I ever one day own a comedy club, is like, there's so many things that the venue is so part of the show. Like you are like one, like fourth of the show. Then there's, the bar. Is there clean toilets? Is the venue low? Is it dark? Is it like, there's no distractions? Does it have air conditioning? If it's too hot, they're going to be thinking like, it's all that shit. Yeah. That, sometimes comics will be like, oh, fucking had a bad show. I'm like, it wasn't you. Like, it was like they were sweating. Like, they're probably like, I've got a pool of sweat in my ball sack right now. Like, I need to, open my legs. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I learned on the road. And especially this is pre-COVID. I feel like post-COVID, so many more people are open to comedy. Like, I think pre-COVID, like we were touring like, oh God, we did shows like everywhere, like Middle East. We did shows like, I'm in Jamaica. We did a show in Kingston, Jamaica, which was just like, I mean, talk about a bad show. It wasn't a bad show. Like, it was just crazy. Like, it was just one of these like outdoor venues. Like, it was a difficult, even to set up the venue.
Outdoor in Jamaica is also like I'm sweating just thinking about it.
It was like going to a barbecue. Like, it felt like that vibe. Like, you had the plastic white chairs, like, and all this kind of stuff. And it was like an outdoor wedding venue. But I was like, I don't know if any wedding has ever happened here. And like the sort of pavilion area where we were performing, like no raised stage or anything. It was just like concrete. And they had all these like little, not nails, but they're like those kind of like, I don't know, things that you put down maybe for like robbers so that they don't like jump into your garden and like whatever. Yeah. And there was a bunch of them all over the stage area, called stage very lightly. And I had flip-flops on and I was walking and one just went through my foot and it was rusty. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a problem. Like, because we weren't getting back to America like for a couple of days. And I was like, the whole time I was like, have I got tetanus? And I was like, is my jaw going? Like, so I had to go back to Miami and get a tetanus shot. So that was
wow. Can I also ask, like, so you guys are going to all of these places, Jamaica, the Middle East, the US, Europe. How are you deciding are you just thinking like, oh, this would be like a fun place to travel to and let's see if we can put on a show?
Yeah, it was interesting because like we'd spent probably 2017 kind of going back and forth and kind of figuring it out, this kind of stuff. But that was also back in the day where like Facebook ads really worked. And so we had a storytelling show about dating and it was sold more in that aspect of like, come and tell your dating stories and we'll tell ours. But it was disguised as like a comedy show basically. Yeah. And people were coming like, that was so funny. Like, like, which also is probably good because you undersell it. You're like, oh yeah, it's storytelling, like, people or whatever. But it was, it was one of those things where generally if we were kind of like, we'd literally look at the world map and we're like, okay, like we're going here. Let's look, where are the other countries here? Where's the capital city? What's the population? Okay, there's got to be at least 100 expats that are living there. And then we would test a Facebook event ads. So we would just test it, like put $10 behind it for a couple of days. And then if the low click rate was there, like probably, 20 cents or like whatever it was, then we're like, okay, there's interest. Let's find a venue. Let's put on a show. So it was very tech heavy, I feel like, in that kind of way.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to go to so many different places. And I don't want to make you like shit on any country, but like, do you have any like that? The outdoor among the anti-theft nails in Jamaica is a great one. But do you have any other ones that were particularly memorable as far as like, I don't know, the crowd not getting it or just it being not prepared for comedy?
New Zealand. I was straight up like, I don't care. I'm not punching down. I'm not punching down.
You're punching kind of across, actually.
Yeah, punching across. I had the worst shows in New Zealand. And,
Really?
and it's not just me. Like, I even asked my Kiwi friend when I got back to Australia, and I was like, they were the shittest audiences I've ever had. And he was like, yeah, that's Kiwis. And everyone I've spoken to that is New Zealand, they're like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, because I sort of went into New Zealand, because like a lot of people would be like, oh, it'd be like the Middle East or, it'd be like parts of Africa and like this. And I was like, no. It was the New Zealanders, And also, I mean, I don't know.
Do you have any theories? Like what?
I have many theories because I've gone over this many times. Like even Jimmy Carr said it. He was just like, they're the worst audiences. And even Flight of the Conchords, like New Zealanders didn't like them until they went to the US and made it. And then they were like, oh, we love them. Like, which is a very tall poppy syndrome, which we have that in Australia as well, where it's like, we don't really like, take you seriously until like America or someone outside goes, you're amazing. Like, but I think the thing is like, there's a saying that even my mum said to me, like, she's like, there's a saying that New Zealanders are more conservative than the British, right? So they're quite religious there as well. There's a lot of like that. And also all my cool New Zealand people that I know, they don't live in New Zealand. They live in London. They live in Australia. They live in Berlin. Like they live outside. I think and they just have a different kind of humor, which is very different to Australia. Because I went in and just being like, "What's up, guys?" Like I just went in like, and they were like, "Ugh," and I was like, "Oh no." But I think also we got a lot of like, I would say hate mail after every show that we did in New Zealand. Like they're like, we're going to write an email, and they did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which that's a level of commitment to hate, which is surprising to me.
But it was weird because it was like we didn't like the way that you said this, or it was like little, and I was just like, okay, then like you didn't like it.
Yeah.
Move on, like.
But was it a thing of like they're religious and dating stories are naturally kind of like more sexual and maybe more free speaking in?
I honestly don't know. Like I had the worst heckle of my life in I wouldn't say the worst, like the finger up the butt like does take it.
Yeah.
But like I had this woman, I was doing a show in Hamilton in New Zealand, and Hamilton is also the chlamydia capital of New Zealand, so I don't know, take that as you will. And so we did this show, and I was telling this story about like dating a German guy, because again that was like the only set that I had at the time, and she just kept talking through my set, and I was like, are you gonna talk my entire set? She's like, yeah, if you continue to be unfunny. And I was like, and this is coming from a woman as well, and I was like, girl, like, feminism, like, and she was also a lesbian as well, like she's there with her lesbian part, and I was like, really? Okay. And I was like, well, I have this story or I have this story. Which story would you want to hear? And she's like, I want to hear the one about the Nazi. And I was like, okay. Like just. And then she still kept talking, and I was like, what? And I was like, you know what? Just leave. Like, and everyone else, that's when I love it when everyone in the audience turns on the heckler.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
So good. Because you're just like, because you feel just like, you guys fight for me. Like, do this. And then they were turning on her. They're like, just get out. If you don't like it, just get out. And then she's like, yeah, I will if you give me my money right now. Right. And she wouldn't leave until we gave her cash, like her money back. And I was like, just go, and like we will give you like the refund. Like the other comic was like, yeah, I'll just give it to you, like whatever. But like just horrible. And I was just like, what happened? Are you okay?
Yeah,
like
very weird. I don't understand people who like want to just bring like go to a performance to be negative. Like, it's a
but
weird.
I think that's why. And I still have, I have a few people message like, when are you going to come to Auckland? I'm like, never.
Yeah.
Come to Australia.
Yeah, you guys have burned that bridge. You'll have to fly over.
Yeah,
if
I've
you
been
wanna see
twice.
me
I've
live.
been twice. Like, I will say, like, Auckland was good, but it's also just that extra, like, 3-hour flight from Australia, which I'm just always like, it always takes so long to get home that I'm like, sorry guys, like,
it's enough.
Yeah, it's enough. Like, but yeah, so I will happily and proudly say New Zealand, fight me. Or fight
like
me.
it.
I can't even do the accent.
Yeah, this is good. I need some controversy to get the pod off the
Good, yeah,
ground.
good.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want all 12 people who live in New Zealand to really get fired up about this clip.
Yes.
So
Slide into my DMs, fight me. I will.
I did this corporate gig, and the woman who booked me, she was a DJ.
Yep.
And it was the time I was doing my first tour. And she was talking about, I was kind of saying like, I'm touring. I don't know. It's like, it's kind of like, it's harder than I expected. And she was like, yeah, it's such an interesting thing as a performer. She was saying like as a DJ, where she was like, I had this experience where I was in this club in Bali and it was like 3,000 people and they're having the time of their life. And after the show, the place had put me up in this great hotel and I'm in this infinity pool watching the sunset in Bali. And then she was like, and then I was just looking around and it was just like, I'm surrounded by couples and I'm just by myself. And she was like, and that disconnect between like, I'm, giving this energy to 3,000 people who are reflecting it back to me, to like, I'm just by myself in this place. And it hit me so much because on my very small level of like, I'm doing a show for 20 people and then I'm eating dinner by myself and crawling into my hostel bed as in his 30s, which is don't love, but and so that was also kind of part of the impetus of the podcast, was like I wanted to talk a little bit to people who have toured a little bit about like what that experience is like for you, and if it has been challenging, have there been like strategies or things that helped you manage that or make it better?
Yeah, I think very good question, Patrick.
Thank you. I'm a pretty talented podcaster.
Yeah, very, very deep, very deep. I didn't think the podcast was going to go there. Like we've just gone from finger in the butt to mental health.
Yeah.
Like it's very good.
Don't forget shitting on New Zealand.
Yeah,
we also have that
yeah,
finger in the
true.
butt, shit on New Zealand.
Yeah.
And now let's talk about mental health in the performing arts.
Mental health. Yeah, very good question. I think I definitely come from like the theater background, the cabaret background, where I was always surrounded by cast members. Like there would always be at least a cast of like 4 or 5 people. So you had energy to bounce off if you were having a bad day or like whatever. And when I moved into stand-up, I was like, oh, this is very like a solo kind of act, like where you travel alone. And I mean, I was lucky, like during Story Party, like I was with another comic, so I had that sort of bounce off. But I realized in that time, like especially I was traveling like all the time, and I was so disconnected from even the ground. Like I just didn't feel grounded. I always just felt like I was in the air. Like, and at that point I was making very good money and like we were traveling around, staying in very nice hotels and traveling well. And like, and I knew at that time, like you sort of lose yourself. Like, and in that point I remember just thinking like, I understand how like some of these celebrities go crazy. Like, because unless you have a good, like, and you see that all the time in every like celebrity documentary, it's like, had she have had her friends around her, like she wouldn't have died, or like this kind of thing. And that I'm very good at keeping in touch with people, probably too much. I'm like on my phone a lot, but that's just the nature of being alone so much that I do, like I always reach out to my friends, I always call them. I'm very wanting to keep in touch with their lives and all this sort of stuff, which I think a lot of people don't understand, but once they sort of like, even my partner, like he's like, what? He's like, you're so good at like keeping in touch and doing that. And I was like, yeah, because if that it's being alone, and I'm not good alone. Like I'm very, being alone is not good for me. Like, and I've felt that in my life a lot of times. And so I just really make sure that I reach out to people, call people, I've always had this like idea that like friends are like plants, you've got to keep watering them and like keeping them alive. And for those people in my life, like I really make sure of that. And then when I toured solo after COVID, that was even harder because it was just literally me and I didn't have a partner. I was single. I was like traveling, and there's just so many times where I was like, what am I doing this for? Like, you know, and again, that thing of like people are coming to my shows and they come up afterwards and they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. We love you and all this sort of stuff. And they're like, do you want to come party with us? Like, do you want to have, and I was just like, I'm going to go home and order room service and go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that's what made me happy. But I also nurtured, I go to these places a lot now, like Singapore or like India, all these places where, you know, either I'll meet other comics or I'll make friends with the comedians, or maybe people who come to the show that I kind of just vibe with. So that I know that if I go to a city, I'm never really alone. Like I can always reach out to someone. You have some little
community.
Yeah. And that's also the nature of just touring a lot and being in these cities a lot, that you get to know, the local scene, but also, you know, I have friends now all over the world, which is amazing. Like I get to, so I think that's kind of one thing, is just kind of fostering like friendships and relationships with people. And it does make touring so much easier in that way.
Yeah. That's such a good, I think like it's a good touring advice, but it's just like a good life advice. Cause I will say as someone who I think struggles more with being good at the reaching out thing, my friends who are the yous, it's like I'm so grateful, because it's like I also feel like, and it's not a fair dynamic, but it is the dynamic where, but I'm like, thank you that you reach out and make us, like, not make us, but you reach out, and so then we do the phone call, and we keep this thing alive, because it's not that part doesn't come as easily to me, you know.
And it doesn't for a lot of people. Like I think and probably as well, like I do feel like, if I'm gonna specify gender, like a lot of men I think have a lot more not issues with it, but it's just like not so much in their kind of way, whereas I find a lot of my female friends or female comics are kind of a little bit more like that. So but then also as well, like I mean, I've seen a lot of male comics that tour and they're single, and you know, they'll hook up, they'll use Tinder, like they'll, you know, make those connections in that way, or meet girls at shows and, you know, have that connection, which I just like,
which is a very deep and I'm sure meaningful connection that really keeps them afloat, and definitely isn't them running away from anything.
Right. But I mean, obviously as a woman, like as a female comic and traveling, like it's just like, I mean, you always have to think about safety, and like that for me was like just I could never do that. Like it'd just be like, oh, it was just too scary. You don't have a lot of time in a city, but you know, each to their own, and people do what they need to do.
What was that jump from like, you're doing this, you know, kind of incredible level of touring before COVID, and then you have to like strike out on your own? Was like that must have been challenging. Like, did that? What was the moment where it felt like it clicked for you, where you're like, oh, I can do this on my own, or I can make this work, or this could even be, you know, better than what it was before? Yeah,
I think definitely like for me, I was very fortunate during COVID because we were still touring. Like I think the last show that we did was like March, I want to say like 15th, 2020 or something. Like it was literally the day Europe went into lockdown. Yeah. And we did our last show in Riga in Latvia, and we just didn't even know. And funnily enough, the next show that I did in 2020 in September was in Riga, Latvia. And it was like they still hadn't, it had been 6 months and no one else had been in there, and they still had all the seating set up from our last show in March. And like we went in and like everything was like socially distanced, like everything was like 2 seats like this, and I was like, that's so weird. Like the last time we were here, like, you know, 6 months goes by and we're like, what the fuck? And so yeah, I think I was very fortunate during COVID. I went back to Australia, and a lot of the videos that we had recorded over the last like 3 years of touring, because again we were in the moment, we're like, we never felt anything was good enough. We're like, oh, we need to film again, we forgot that joke, and all these stuff started going viral. So I was able to kind of like live off YouTube through COVID, which was incredible. And then also gain my own following, which then I was like, oh, like I've been looking for a way out of this for a while. And then sort of started getting that kind of, people were really following me. They really loved my stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, you know, I'd never had that before, and that sort of real virality. And and then I sort of then we went into the second lockdown, and then my channel started picking up, and I was like, okay, like, yeah, this is the time. And people wanted to see me solo, and like there was that, thirst for it. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. And yeah, like 4 years later, I'm still doing it.
One other quick thing on social media, and then we'll wrap up here.
Yeah.
But you said something interesting to me when we did get coffee, where you were saying in India, comedians are much more brand focused in terms of, which I think that could have a negative connotation, but the way I took it at least was like that they were more kind of like, I know who I am and what I'm trying to present online as a more cohesive, I don't know, for lack of a better word, product or whatever. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think India is such a wild place for comedy because it's still so young, like in terms of that. And, your average kind of good comic has at least like 1 or 2 million like followers online. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's wild. And like, it's just like, if you hit and you do like the one thing, it's like maybe, I don't know if there's anywhere else in the world that I kind of know like that. Maybe a little bit like the States, but I still feel like the States is very like fragmented. But if something hits in India, it's like you are just shot to fame, like very quickly. And this guy Samay Raina, who's the nicest guy. Like I've done a few gigs with him in Mumbai, and he made this show last year called India's Got Latent, which was kind of a mixture of like Kill Tony and like Britain's Got Talent, and it was like a kind of panel, and they get people on, and it just went like every video on YouTube got at least like 22 million views. Like,
wow,
wild. And he was already a very good comic. Like, I think when I met him, he had like 500,000 followers on Instagram, and now he's got like 6.5 or something.
Wow.
And he's just done a massive tour of the US and Canada and Australia and all of that. Like, he sold like I think like 60,000 tickets or something. Like, don't quote me on it, but like in the US alone. And he does it all in Hindi as well. And you just like, and he just went so famous. And then also there was like a bit of like issues with one of the episodes. So now it doesn't go anymore because like people, that's the other thing in India. If you get too big and like, then people will be like, oh, I was offended by that and this. And it's been a whole kind of journey for him. But just that thing of just shooting to fame so quickly, and like everyone knowing who he is and just selling out like stadiums. And I think that's also the reality of social media and stuff now is like, if you have like, and I think it's also that thing now where if you have a gimmick or if you have something that you do, and I know, there's a lot of comics that do that. Like, I mean, not so much a gimmick, but like say Morgan J, for example, if you know him, like it's like he has this and it works and it's just kicked off and people love it and they go and see the shows. So I think it's just one of those things now, if you are a little bit different or you do something that just really hits, like the fame that you can get to is just wild. And you can just be like a nobody and just like a comedian like you and I, but you have one idea and it takes off and that's it.
And that's, it is. It's the, everybody complains about the algorithm and having to be online, and it is shitty. But the other side is like, we're all one clip away from having a nice career.
Yeah, I mean, I even have a friend like, and he has like it's a very good joke, I will put it that way. And like, I think he's got most of his followers from just like, he just keeps putting up that one joke from different rooms around, and it's just like, cool, like that, like, if that's all you need, like I'm like, why am I writing another hour? Like, what am I doing, And that's the other thing, like I still put up old clips from like my old shows and stuff, because like, I mean, I forget about it as well. I'm like, oh yeah, that bit, and like then you'll cut it and you'll put it up and it'll do well and sort of stuff. And like, there's so many people in this world that haven't seen it, like I think also like, oh, we can burn material. I'm like, nah, just put it out again. Like, I don't know, that's where I am now with social media. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
So the way I like to end is I like to kind of end on a little, since we've talked about all of the bad, I like to end on a little bit of like a positive note, which is, do you have a memory of a show where that was like a really good show? It doesn't have to be like the best show, but for me, I think of like maybe a moment where you felt like, holy shit, like this is it. I'm living the dream, or I think this is going to work out. I remember for me, like one example for me specifically, like the Catnip, a funny comedian here in Berlin, she used to have this 3-way show at the Wall, where you get to do a half an hour. She booked me for it, which was exciting. It was sold out, which meant I made $200 from the show, and I had my own show. And I had also that weekend I made my rent from telling jokes, and that was like the first time, and I like cried and called my friend, and I was like, I made my rent, and then of course I made no money for the next 3 months after that. But like, that's for example, one of a few different memories where I'm like, that was like a special moment. So when I ask, does anything come to mind? And if not, it's also okay.
God, I mean, I think it was just that thing. There was one of the moments where I just really felt like it was like, you always like looking for the next thing. It's like, what's next? And I found my old journals back at home, I think maybe during COVID or something. And it was just like, it had a list of it was like, win a Tony, win an Oscar. I'm like, all right, calm down, Elena. But like, and like on that, it just said, I'd be happiest if I'm just traveling and performing. And then, and I just kind of look back and I'm like, that's what you're doing. Like, you're literally doing it, and you're earning a living. And I think, if you're a comic and you're earning a living and you're living comfortably, that like, what more can you ask for, And I know everyone's like, but then I want to do a TV show, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. I'm like, yeah, that can come. But like, at the end of the day, like, you're doing better than so many other people who are dreaming about this, or, people who work hard. Like, I'm very, whenever I'm traveling or I'm touring and I look at people who are in service jobs, and I mean, I was there once. Like, I used to be a cleaner. I used to be like working in hospitality. I used to do all this kind of stuff. Like, and it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm very privileged to be in this situation. And my boyfriend reminds me all the time, he's like, you're very privileged. Like, you get to do what you love, and you're doing a job that makes people happy as well. And I think there's like shows obviously that come to mind. And like, I think it was probably the end of 2018. It was like one of the last shows that we did. And that was like, after doing 300 and whatever freaking shows, 350 shows. And I think one of the last ones we did was in Vancouver, and it was the biggest show that we'd done all year. It was like, I think 450 or 500 people. And it was just like, it was incredible. And my best friend was living in Whistler at the time, and she came down, and I was telling a story about like her and me in the Greek islands, and like, and and like, I called her out during the show, and like, because she was part of the story, she didn't know I was telling it, and it was just like, it felt like everyone else was like in on the joke too, and it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, okay, like, and it was just so fun, and I was like, this is what we want, and this is what we like at doing it. And then after that, like, obviously, things happen in your personal life.
Literally goosebumps.
Oh yeah, okay, wow, oh my God, stop it.
I'm with you on this emotional journey.
That's it. I'm gonna quit comedy now and just be a motivational speaker. But I think like that's it. Like, it's just those moments are the moments that we live for, and like, and I love when I have friends in the audience and family, and like, I mean, the last show I do, I tell a story. Obviously, it's a very more personal story. I don't really talk about sex so much. It's about my grandma passing away, and like, dealing with grief and going on a holiday with my parents. And like, even just recently, I did a show in my hometown, and my parents came, and they've seen the show a little bit. Like, they saw it in Istanbul, and which was crazy, because like, they were just like sitting there, and my mom's such a big part of the show. And then people were like, are they your parents? And I was like, yeah. And my dad, like, obviously I talk about my dad a lot in this part of it. And it's basically like doing edibles with my parents for the first time. And like, I never thought that they would ever do it. And we were in my hometown, and it was like all my parents' friends like coming to see me. And like, I just looked over at my parents when I was like telling the story, and like, obviously everyone's dying of laughter, and I'm just looking at my dad, and he's just like really smiling, and my mum too. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, it's like those moments as well, where you're just like, oh, they are proud of me. Like, I hope, like, I mean, they are material, but like, it's, so I think those moments as well, where you can kind of incorporate your personal life into shows, and it also just makes you more real, I think, as well.
Well, that's also like such a testament to like the craft that you've been working on for so many years, because I do think it is such a hard needle to thread, where you can, talk about people in your life, like your parents, in a way that is funny, but also that they can enjoy, and isn't, like
And
embarrassing them or whatever.
And relatable. And I think that's also like where, you know, I come from. I think most comics, we talk about what we know. And, you know, I think this last show, people were probably like, oh, we were kind of expecting it to be more about like sex and dating. I'm like, yeah, surprise, dead grandma. Like,
yeah.
but it's nice to be able to.
Haven't you heard Dead Grandmas at the new sex?
Yeah, right. Like that's hot.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, not hot girl summer, dead granny winter. And so like that's the other thing that like, that challenge as well to like write new stuff. And but yeah, I think that's the kind of the moments where you just go, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing it for. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yes. I mean, everywhere, basically. You know what it's like to be a comedian.
Yeah.
Except OnlyFans, but actually maybe OnlyFans. Like,
Why
I was
not?
talking to Frankie the other day. He's got an OnlyFans, and he's like, yeah, I didn't even show my dick, and it's great. And I was like, all right. So, you can find me TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Elena Gabrielle, or if you're lazy, just type Elena comedian in Google, and I'm the first. I think I'm the only comedian called Elena, or at least like, you know, with a following. So, yeah.
And the links are in the description below. And thank you so much. This was so nice.
Thanks for having me. So much fun. Amazing.
The show must go on. Even if the show goes wrong. The show must go wrong.